How can you spend money on your friends without it coming across like you're trying to bribe them? If you want to be generous, you want to buy things for your friends, but you don't want them to feel like you're trying to pay them for your friendship. I'll give you an example. Let's say you text someone, you say, "Hey, I'm inviting you and 12 of our friends to go to a fancy restaurant this weekend. It's all paid for and I'll cover the check. What do you think?" If I received something like that, that would feel tacky to me. Like, I would at least ask if I could contribute to part of the check. But what if the invite was something like this instead? "Hey, I'm throwing a dinner party for you and 12 of our friends at my place. Do you want to come over?" This feels really different. Now it would even be socially unacceptable for me to try to offer to cover part of the meal because it's a home-cooked meal. What's happening here? What is the social dynamic underlying this? When I was growing up, I used to dream about being rich because I thought that if I owned a fancy house and had fancy clothes and drove a fancy car, people would think that I'm interesting and cool and would want to hang out with me. But as it turns out, it doesn't actually work that way. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel talks about how there's this business where you can just rent a private plane, but the plane isn't going anywhere. You're not flying anywhere. The plane is just parked on the airport tarmac. And what you do is you go into the plane and you take a selfie of yourself so that you can post it onto Instagram and show everyone how cool and rich you are for having a private plane that you can take a photo in. But if you're scrolling social media and you just see someone with a selfie in a plane, you're not thinking about how cool and interesting they are. What you're thinking is, wow, if I had a plane, I would be really cool. But the irony is, if you're the person taking the photo in the plane, you don't care about who the actual owner of that plane is. You just care about them to the extent that they provided that plane for you to take your own photo. People don't care about how cool or interesting you are. They care about how interested you are in their lives, how much you listen to them, and how much you care about what's going on. A real friend is somebody who cares about you and wants to be interested in your life, not just show off how interesting they are to you. What wealth allows you to do is to be generous with your friends and create new experiences together. But the awkward part is you can't just buy things for people outright. Otherwise, it will feel like you're trying to buy their friendship. Let's do another example. Let's say, for example, you wanted to go on a vacation with your friends. If you rent a vacation house and you say, "Hey, I rented a vacation home on the Cape for the weekend. Do you want to come hang out on the beach? It's all paid for." That would feel super awkward to me. Like, I would at least ask how much does it cost? Can I contribute in any way? It sounds really expensive. But what if instead the invite was something like, "Hey, I'm going to my cottage on the Cape for the weekend. Do you want to come hang out on the beach with us?" This kind of offer now feels much less like a weird power imbalance. But it's not just a matter of expense. Consider that renting can have lower total costs than owning does, especially if you don't vacation that often. When you rent, you just pay the rental fee and that's all you have to pay. But when you own, there's also maintenance, taxes, insurance, not to mention the headache of having to take care of this property that you own. When you have wealth, what that allows you to do is to buy things outright instead of renting them. And socially, it feels more authentic for you to let people access things that you already own. It's more authentic to invite people to come to your house, or take them out in your kayak, or drive them in your car. But if you're paying for dinner or gifts or activities, this feels a lot more like a direct wealth transfer, like you're just paying your friends. I don't think this is a constructive social norm, firstly because renting can often be cheaper than buying, and secondly because ownership has higher upfront costs, which presents a greater barrier to people without wealth to still be able to be generous and spend money on their friends in socially acceptable ways. But really, when you own something and just let people access things you already own, that's actually even less generous. If you think about it though, if I just gift you something, that's even more generous than letting you access something I already own. When I own an asset and I just let you access it, I'm not actually giving you anything. I'm just letting you borrow it for a temporary period of time, and then that asset is returned to me at the end of the day. But if I'm buying a gift for my friends, that's even more generous because they get to keep the thing afterwards. It's just not seen as socially acceptable. Money can't buy you happiness, but what it can buy you is socially acceptable excuses to do awesome activities with your friends, and it's your friends that bring you happiness. Now, everything we talked about assumes that you actually want to be generous with your friends, but what if you just want to be seen as generous without really being generous at all? Are there any psychological biases we can exploit to be seen as generous without actually spending a lot of money? And the answer is actually yes. I'll be talking about this in more detail in my next video. Click on the subscribe button to be notified when that comes out. In the meantime, you can click here to see my latest upload, where we'll be exploring more of these hidden social norms on this channel. Thanks, see you next time.